good evening, good night. Welcome to another episode of RGS Adventures. Today is the parade, and just a parade, of Saturday at the Ickesburg Fall Fest 2023. So it's about 25 minutes long, I think. We're just going to see from the start to the end of all the tractors that went through on Saturday. So sit back, enjoy, and watch. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Have fun. Bye.
All right, folks. Our parade is started here. I was honored today to get to drive a tractor in a parade. It's been a lot of years since I got to drive a tractor in a parade. I'm driving a 1949 Alice Chalmers Model C. First tractor I ever drove, I was 4 years old. This was my grandfather's. It's in memory of Homer Pap Simonton, and it is owned by my aunt and uncle. And it has never really gone very far in its life. It has pretty much stayed right here in Ickesburg. And now it's just a parade tractor, and get to take it to shows. So up next, we have a local Alice Chalmers enthusiast, Mr. Zach Kell, on a 1962 Alice Chalmers D17. Thank you very much for bringing that out, Zach. All right. Thanks, Zach. And this year we featured the Alice Chalmers. The D series was the main one we wanted to talk about. Up next, we have a 1954 Alice Chalmers WD-45 owned by Zach Kell. Eli Kell is driving. Thank you, Eli. He's the vice president of our fire company here. And up next, we have another D model. This is a D15. This is probably about a 1963, 64, I believe, if I'm thinking right. Toby Fisher from Ickesburg owns this. Thank you, Toby. Next, we have a 1963 Alice Chalmers D12. This is owned by Bob Bollinger from Needmore, PA. Thank you for being here, Bob. We really appreciate it. That is a D12. That is a D12. Next we have, I can get to the other side. Next we have a miniature D21. This is Isaac Martin from Newville, who built this himself. In his shop, him and his boys, they built this. Pretty nice little tractor for a replica. Thank you for coming, Ike. Now we have Tyrus Wilson on the 1955 WD-45, which is a single front wheel tractor. And this is owned by Tyrus and his wife Karen. They're from Shermansdale. And they also have the corn sheller up there, but due to the weather this week, we just couldn't do anything with that. So thank you, Tyrus, for coming. The unique things about the single front wheel is the fact that they were mainly made for vegetable farmers. That not being a high crop, there is a high crop up there that is a diesel, which is an extremely rare tractor. Here we have a 1975 Alice Chalmers 185. This is owned by the Urich family here in Ickesburg. Mr. Jim Stuber's driving it for us today. Thank you, sir. He likes to drive things that make a lot of noise. I guess my microphone is breaking up again today. This is an Alice Chalmers Model D. This is owned by Mark Strauch, and this is a Model D Alice Chalmers power unit that Mark also owns. Dylan's driving. Thank you for operating today, sir. Next, we have our featured garden tractor this year, and this has been on our Facebook page all year long. Dan Spriggle on his 1964 John Deere 110. And this was restored by Dan and my son Zach. With Dan driving, and he's teaching the next generation how to drive. That's Dan's son, Dan and Darian's son. Thank you, Dan. Next we have a 1964 Alice Chalmers D19 diesel. This was the first tractor, very first farm tractor that was made, manufactured from the factory with a turbocharger. This one is owned by Mark Strock, along with the Alice Chalmers hay crusher being pulled behind. Thank you for driving for us. Next we have a 1964 D19 diesel owned by Zach Urich, Nicholsburg. Just acquired that a few weeks ago, and here we go, we're showing it all. Thank you, Zach. Next we have Mark Strock on a 1936 Alice Chalmers WC. Mark has all the goodies up in the chicken house. If you get the chance to go up and check that out. This is also Mark's corn picker back here. This is a model 33, correct? Okay, model 33 single row picker. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you being here with us this weekend. Next up, we have a 1957 D14. This is owned by Zach Urich, and Tom Griffey is the operator. Tom has one of the D10s up here, and it has chains on. He's ready for snow, so he didn't feel like driving it on the hardtop road and bouncing the whole way down through. So we knew we had something for him to drive that was appropriate, and we sure appreciate him bringing that and driving for us. Next, we have a 1951 Alice WD, owned and operated by Steel Graffmeyer from Shermansdale. Thank you, sir. And we have a 1956 WD-45, owned by Guy Tomaso, I'm sorry, Guy Tomaso from Shermansdale. Thank you, sir. Next, we have a 1953 Alice Chalmers WD-45, owned by Harry Graffmeyer from Shermansdale. Thank you for spending the weekend with us. Thank you. 1953 was the very first year for that WD-45. And then we have Mike Roberto on his 1957 WD-45 with factory power steering. Oh, I'm telling you what, isn't that sweet? Isn't that sweet? Those are some of the greatest power steering ever put on a tractor. Thank you for spending the weekend with us. Next, we have an Alice Chalmers CA. This is a 1950 Ducker CA, and this is Brian Hudson. I'm terrible with names today. Terrible with names. Thank you for bringing that out. We were using it to crush some rocks yesterday, but boy, did things get wet overnight. I don't think we're going to make too much stuff happen out there in the field without tearing things up. Next, we have Zach Dim on a 1964 D21. This was the big tractor, the very big tractor. This was what the most iconic Alice Chalmers tractor ever built. I'll steal that from Mark Strock. The first Alice tractor to produce over 100 horsepower. And when this came out in the Series 2, they were well over 120 horsepower. Most popular tractor back in the 60s and early 70s were the farm stock tractor pullers. These babies would walk the dog. This is Zach Dim from down at Littlestown with his fine example. Thank you very much for spending the weekend with us, Zach. Beautiful tractor. Next we have Zach Dim's 1949 Alice WF. This was kind of the standard version of the WD, and they also made this as a standard version of the WC, but they ran it as a WF the whole way through. So, nice little tractor. Not sure who's driving today, but Daniel Kaufman. Sander Kaufman. All right. Thank you, sir. Next, we have a WD Alice here. This is a 1950 WD with the snap coupler grater blade on the back. This is owned and operated by
Scott Kaufman.
Scott Kaufman. All right, thank you, Scott. We appreciate you bringing it out for us. If I was ever going to own a Ford, this would be the one right here. This is probably the prettiest little Ford I've ever seen. 1980 3600, owned by Matt Roller. Am I right, Roller?
Yep.
From Grantville, PA. That is a really nice little tractor. That's the prettiest one I've ever seen. Next, we have a 1980 Wheel Horse C105, also owned by Matt, Granville. Then we have a 1978 Ford LGT 14D diesel. That's a neat little tractor. That's also owned by Matt. And a 1967 John Deere 112 owned by Matt as well. With hydraulic lift. That makes it a little more rare with the hydraulic lift. I have a 1987 Toyota MRT owned by Jay Stutz from Louisville, PA. Thank you for coming out for us today. This is a 1940, correct? 1940? 1940?
1940 Bentley Sport. Millerstown.
Driven by Bentley Sports from Millerstown. It's the John Deere 8. Thank you very much, sir. Up next is a 1943 Farmall Model 8, owned and operated by Terry Urich from Ickersburg. Down to drive his tractor around. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. And we have Steve Byler's Ford 9N. That's a 1939. Steve's from Louisville. It's not Steve driving, though. He's teaching somebody else to drive. So he's sitting back and relaxing now when Dad drives. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. And we have Miles Bird from Louisville on a 1953 Ferguson TO20. Thank you, Miles. He bought that tractor as a basket case, and the guy told him the only way he could buy it is if he was going to fix it up and show it. So that's why he is now showing it off. Next, we have a John Deere Model M, 1949, owned and operated by Roy Carnegie. Roy is from Shippensburg. He was going to go out and mow the grass for us today, but it got a little too wet. He was mowing water instead of grass. Said it mowed grass on Thursday. Next we have Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, local dairy farmer here. It's John Deere 830 diesel. What year is this?
We don't know. That's the thing.
Okay, probably about a 1959. 830 diesel. This was a big horse for John Deere. This was the last hurrah for the two-cylinder John Deeres. And They did it upright because they made them big and they made them heavy. So thank you for bringing that down here. And advertising for the drink whole milk, 97% fat free. If you're going to drink milk, that's the milk you drink because that's the milk that helps the dairy farmers. Next, we have a 1945 Farm 08 owned by Robert Henry from Shermansdale. Thanks for coming out today. Hey, next year this is feature, you know that. We need.
You're one word, nothing, one word and nothing. You're breaking up so bad.
That's right. Next, we have a 1943 Farm 08, owned and operated by Ruth Henry from Shermansdale. Thank you. Then we have a 1948 Farmall C, owned by Ruth Henry and Robert Henry from Shermansdale. My apologies if I'm breaking up on the mic. I have no control over that. Next, we have a 1948 Farmall 8, owned by Kevin Gulf from New Bloomfield. Thank you for coming out. Next, we have a 1935 Alice Chalmers WC, owned by Dennis and Trudy Homer from Ickersburg. Thank you, Ed.
Yes, sir.
1948 John Deere Model B, owned by Robert and Ruth Henry from Shermansdale. And next we have Joelle Bond on her, and I got to read this down here.
Sorry.
1948 Massey Harris pony. And she has taken the youngest with her for a drive. Or not the youngest, this is the oldest of her two children. Yeah, this is the oldest one here. He's the candy guy. Thanks, Joelle. Appreciate it. Next, we have Sue Stone on a 1954 Minneapolis Moline DG one row. Thank you, Sue. And keeping her in line, making sure she doesn't get out of control. 1957 335 Universal Minneapolis Moline, owned by Gail Stone from Louisville.
I got a fender bunny.
He's got a fender bunny, he says. I'm gonna leave that one alone. That would happen to be Jay Hamilton, president of the Perry County Old Iron Collectors. Next we have Aiden Bechtel on a Cub Cadet 105. That is a 1972 Aiden from New Bloomfield. A John Deere 140, 1968, owned by Evan Rule from Westminster, Maryland. Thanks for coming. Next, we have a 1990 John Deere 318, owned and operated by Thomas Boston. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is a 1967 Speedex S18, owned and operated by Evan Dowell from Duncannon. Thank you, sir. And then we have the oddball, 1966 Gilson Pacer, owned and operated by Cooper Smith from Landisburg. Thank you, Coop. And the 1969 Wheel Horse Raider 12, owned by Roy Carnegie and driven by Colin McInnes from Newburgh. Guess Dad doesn't know he can pop wheelies. 1970 Wheel Horse GT14, owned by Jared Carnegie from Shippensburg. Thank you, young man. And we have Ed Horn on a 1655 white Yard Boss. Ed's from Elliotsburg. Don't see very many of these. Thank you, Ed. He's got a really nice old truck up there. If you want to take a look at an old white truck, he's got one. Next, we have a 1995 Wheel Horse 416 8-speed. Dustin Rockwell. He's pulling the. He's got a pretty good jag on the back here now with the garden carts. Next, we have a Wheel Horse Charger, owned and operated by Raylan Rockwell from Elliotsburg. It's a 1968. Well, shake your hand, young fella. There we go. Thank you. And we have a homemade Rumley, half scale, owned and operated by Wes Proctor from Shippensburg, PA. These are neat. These guys that build these, home build them. The real ones are really neat if you can find one. But thank you for coming out, bringing it out. Nice little wagon behind. .1947 Alice Chalmers Model C, owned by the Urick family here at Ickersburg, with Jim Stuber driving. Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Zach Urick driving a 1954 Chevy 3600 dual-wheel pickup truck here with stake body on. This truck has been around for a few years, and we were using it the whole week yesterday. So thank you, Zach, for shining her up and bringing her down. Well, folks, that ends the parade. We do have to check through our records to see who brought things the farthest and who exhibited the most. And I know my sound system is acting up something fierce. Don't know why. But we're going to go up here and check our records, and we have some prizes for those that brought the most and traveled the farthest. So come see us if we holler your name. Thank you very much.